Welcome. And we start off with our bracha. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah.
Amen.
I'm going to go into the screen share. Oh, yes. Let's go. I actually have an illustration that I want to hopefully show you in a little bit. But let's see how this works. Okay. I'm just sorry. I was just sort of checking to see my connection, and I hope it's good enough. Right. Here we go. Oh, gosh. It's saying my internet connection is unstable. All right. Can you all hear me well? Otherwise,
Yes.
I'm going to move. All right.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay.
But we just lost the text.
Yes, I stopped the share. Okay. So, Ani Hashem Elokechem. I, Hashem, am your God. Asher hotzeti etchem. So Asher means who, but it could also be because, right? In that, hotzeti etchem, I brought you out, me'eretz Mitzrayim, from the land of Egypt, mihiyot lahem avadim, from being for them slaves. For eshbor motot ulchem, and I broke the bars of your yoke. Ve'olech etchem komemiut, and I took you. I took you standing upright. Olech is from halach, which means to go, but it's the hifil form. I made you go, right? I made you go upright. And I want to comment a little bit on this. Brought you out of the land of Egypt. I really believe, even though I realize that it essentially on a pshat level is a historical moment, right? But I think its true relevance is as a metaphor, in that in following Torah, we actually discover freedom. We discover freedom from our impulses, and we are truly liberated. In other words, we can see ourselves as when we are subject to our feelings and the whims and fancies of our culture and other kinds of things, to actually be enslaved. And that the religious discipline that the Torah presents is a way of coming out of this enslavement. And of course, we can be enslaved to the pleasures of this world. And it's not to say that we shouldn't be extremely appreciative of all the blessings that we actually have. And just if I may say parenthetically, it occurs to me that one way of trying to overcome, I would say, spiritual depression, and I'm saying spiritual as opposed to clinical, is by developing a sense of appreciation. That learning how to look at those blessings, to count them, to really deeply appreciate what we have, instead of just taking them for granted, can help us. It doesn't guarantee, but it definitely is a way to help us overcome this kind of depression that we can sometimes feel. But I think this understanding Yitziat Mitzrayim, the Exodus from Egypt. By the way, if someone can mute, please, if I hear some feedback, if you can mute, please do. That's what brings it up to date right now. That this Exodus from Egypt is not a one-time event in the past, even though the fact of it would mean that we are deeply, deeply indebted to show our loyalty to Hashem, and that's, I think, part of the idea there, is that we have this special relationship with God, that we owe God the fact that we were released from being slaves to Pharaoh, but I think we also have that sense nowadays as well, and that's what makes it continue. So, and by the way, there is a statement in the rabbinic text that says that every person Every Jewish person should see themselves as having personally been liberated from slavery in Egypt. And of course, the word Mitzrayim, as some of you know, means straits, as in narrow straits, as in being pressed in, right? Surrounded. So here we go. Let me find the place. Ani Hashem Elokechem, I Hashem am your Elohim. Kidai ani sheta'aminu bi. It is I deserve, in a sense, it's saying, right? I am worthy that you should believe in me. She'ani yachol lasot kol eila, because I am capable of doing all these things that have been listed in these blessings. Shaharei hotzeti etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim, because indeed I took you out of the land of Egypt, va'asiti lachem nisim gedolim, and I performed great miracles on your behalf. So again, it's what it's saying is, at least to the people, right? If we look at it as they say in German scholarship, Sitz and Leben, if you look at it and it's actual, the moment you might say that Moses is speaking to the Jewish people, to the Israelites, if we look at it as of that moment, they have still in their memory what has happened, you're right, that they've experienced that liberation from Egypt. And God is saying, look at what I did. Look at all the miracles I've performed. You shouldn't have any doubt that I can continue to do these sorts of things if you're loyal to me. And likewise, at least personally, in sensing the liberation that the Torah and trying to obey divine will does, right? And to look at all the miracles that happen and know that God is going to support us and bless us. If we, and that there's, that it, even though they say you should be like servants serving their master without expectation of reward, nevertheless, to know in our hearts that we are so blessed in so many different ways and additional blessings. So let's keep going. Oh, this was nice. Motot, bars. And I'm going to see if I can find a picture for you. Kemin yeted, it is like a peg, bishne roshei haol, on the two heads of the yoke, a yoke of an ox, think of an ox and yoke. Hama'akvim hamosarot, that hold on to the reins, okay, that you can attach the reins to, shelot tetzeh merosh hashor, so that, and I think here mosrot, even though normally the term is reins for a horse, I feel like in a way this is, well, maybe it does mean reins. I was thinking maybe it actually means the bars of the yoke. Okay, but anyway, shelot tetzeh merosh hashor, that they should not detach from the head of the ox, V'yatir hakesher, and loosen the bond, the knot. And he gives the example in Jeremiah 27, Aseh lacha mosrot umotot. Make for yourselves, we'll translate this as reins and bars. Okay. And there's the French word. Lauren, I don't know if you have that handy there. And this is,
yeah, it says Cheville, Cheville.
interesting, because this is a kuf, right? Interesting. Okay. Like kevil. Kevil? I don't know. Anyway.
Well, I mean, in French, CH is sh, so.
Oh, I see. Okay. All right. Even though a kuf is a hard sound, could well be. Thank you. As I said, flock in German or in Yiddish, right? So it means this particular part. Let me see if I can quickly find the picture that I was looking for. Here it is. I found it. Baruch Hashem. There's the picture. I believe this is what we're
It
talking.
means peg.
Right.
It says, I looked it up, it means peg.
Okay, nice. So I think this is the peg that they're talking about. Right? So that the yoke does not detach from the ox. Anyway, I thought you'd like to see a picture of it. but I believe he's talking about this. And of course, this is a bar, right? Okay. Let me go back to a different share. Okay. Go back to the original one. So, koma miyut, upright. The koma skufa. He just takes a word that's not that common and puts it into simple Hebrew. Koma means stature, right? Zukufa means upright, upright. And I'm afraid at this particular point, we are going to transition 180 degrees. So that's the condition. That's what happens if you do follow God's commandments. The imlo tishma'uli, but if you don't hearken to me, if you don't pay attention to me, the lo ta'asu, and you don't perform it kol mitzvot ha'ela, all these mitzvot. The imlo tishma'uli, if you don't hearken to me. So because it says shamoah, so we understand just the opposite. Liyot amelim ba Torah, to occupy yourselves, to labor in the Torah, v'lada'at midrash chachamim, and to understand the interpretation of the sages. Right? We're laboring in it right now. Yachol, so he says, now he argues, because of course, if you don't hearken to me, it could mean Yachol, it's possible, lekiyum hamitzvot, that we could be talking, that this sentence is actually talking about upholding the mitzvot, performing the commandments. Keshehu omer velo ta'asu, but since the sentence goes on to say, and do not perform, etc., hare kiyum mitzvot amor. Well, the performance of the mitzvah is already mentioned in that particular part of the sentence. Hama ani mekayem. So what am I really trying to say? The imlo tishma'uli, that if you don't listen to me, if you don't understand me, don't pay attention to me, the answer is liot amelim b'Torah. So what it means is to labor in the Torah. Uma tomud lomar li. And why does it say li, me? What's the point of that? Ein li ella ze hamakir et ribono. What the li means is, it simply means that we recognize our master. Umitkavein nimrod bo. So this is someone who doesn't listen to the li. In other words, he recognizes that he has a master. He recognizes that there is a God. Umitkavein nimrod bo. But the force of the li here is that such a person has every intention to rebel against him. V'chein ben Nimrod, and likewise Nimrod, when we talk about Nimrod in Genesis chapter 10, Gibor Tzayid, it says about him in Genesis chapter 10, Gibor Tzayid, a mighty warrior, Lifnei Hashem, before God, a mighty warrior before God. Shemakiro, because Nimrod recognized that there was a divine commander, Umitkaven Nimrod bo, but had every intention to do the opposite, to rebel against him. V'chein ba'anshei Sodom, and we have another example with regards to the people of Sodom in Genesis chapter 13. Ra'im, wicked, v'chataim, and sinners, lashem ma'od. So it says sinners to God greatly. Makirim et ribonam, they believed in God. They believed that there was a God. Omid kavnin limrodbo, but nevertheless, their intention is to rebel against God's will, to do what is wicked. Every intention. Velo ta'asu, and not perform. And again, this is the sifra here. Mishelo tilamdo, when you don't learn it, when you don't learn Torah, lo ta'asu, what are you going to do? How do you know what to do if you haven't learned it? Haresh te averot. So now we wind up with two sins, two iniquities, two transgressions. Gets right into it, doesn't it? Okay, so we're gonna go. I'll do the best I can with the next. Okay. The imbechukotai tim asu. Yeah, go ahead.
I have a question.
Sure.
So limerod that you said in the last Rashi,
Yes.
what does that mean?
To rebel.
So it sounds like Nimrod.
Yes, it does. That's why he was called Nimrod. Correct. Good.
Okay, so that is the same root.
Yes, it's play on words. That his name represents the kind of personality he had.
And secondly, I do have a parenthetical listing the two transgressions, but I guess they're clear already.
Go on.
It just says not learning the Torah and not fulfilling its commandments properly
Correct. Correct. But one leads to
due
another.
to lack of learning it.
Yes, exactly. Yes. If you don't know, how are you going to know what to do? Again, this is sort of when we talk about Torah being light, it means we don't go through life blindly. We are able to discern what's right and what's wrong and think these things through and be concerned about things that people might never be concerned about. So, and if you reject my laws, so remember, we think of chukim as being laws that are things that are simply, they're not necessarily rational. So for example, we could say Shabbat and Kashrut and things like that don't necessarily, that's not like thou shalt not steal or thou shalt not murder or things like that. These chukim are like, then of course the classic example is the ashes, sprinkling with the ashes of the red heifer. So it says if you reject, right? And to consider mi'us means sort of put down, right? To even go to the point of disgusting, right? And again, this is Torah in a way, and if my laws and mishpatim are the things that are the basis of society, right? That have to do with justice and compassion and human decency. Tigal nafshechem, your souls loathe the vilti asot, so as not to perform et kol mitzvotai, any of my commandments, right? Lahafrechem, to destroy et briti, my covenant, right? To crush or to destroy my covenant. The imbechukotai timasu. There's lots of Rashi on this. This stuff is not only painful, but there's a lot to understand. Okay. Imbechukotai timasu. Mo'es ba'acherim ha'osim. Look at where this goes. It means to scorn others who perform them. In other words, when you say you reject my laws, it isn't just that you reject them. You scorn people. You put down people who do in fact perform the laws. So it's something. In a way, it's sort of defining it as something worse. So if you don't perform them, but you don't put down people who are performing them, it's not the same thing, right? It's not as serious. It's taking this and making it much more serious, which in some ways gives us a little bit of breathing space.
Except for the
Yes.
It's very typical for people who are anti-religious to scorn people who are religious.
Put them down.
And especially, and for Jewish people who are not observant of these commandments to scorn people who are, and including members of my own family.
I hear you. I know.
So it doesn't make it easier.
No.
Or the other way around. People who are very observant scorn those of us who follow a little differently.
Could be true, but that's not what this is talking about.
I would hope so, because we have learned. So I don't know. We can't all be biblical. So.
Well, my understanding is that it's putting this in very how can I put it, very bleak terms to try and get our attention. Okay, and that I think it has more to do with direction than necessarily accomplishment, right? That there's a huge difference between a desire to do this and to do the best you can, even if you don't succeed, and that it's the process that really counts. But nevertheless, it has to put it in stark terms for us to understand that there are serious consequences to these things. So, mishpatai tigal nafshechem, right? So again, you loathe my commandments. Soneh hachachamim. So in this case, it's one who hates the sages, and soneh is to hate. Levilti asot, so as not to do. And he says here it means monea et acherim asot, preventing other people from performing these commandments. So it's interesting, in every case, he takes it to a more serious level. It kol mitzvotai, so it says all my commandments. So notice it says my commandments. Kofer b'mitzvot. So in other words, he denies the validity of the commandments. Shelo tzivitim, and that the point is that saying that God didn't command them, that they're not divine, that these commandments are not divine. Lachach ne'emar, and this is why it states it kol mitzvotai. Again, I need to ask whoever's not muted to please mute yourself. Ne'emar et kol mitzvotai. That's why it says all my commandments. V'lo ne'emar et kol hamitzvot, and it doesn't simply say and who doesn't do all the commandments. It says my commandments, understood to mean that they are divine, that they're of divine origin. You can see how, here we are reading stuff from about the 12th century, and yet look at how modern it represents, how what a modern point of view it seems to be representing. Just interesting. Let me keep going. Let me find it. Okay. Lahafrachem et briti, right? To crush, to destroy my covenant. Kofer ba'ikar, right? It means to deny a basic principle, but what it means is to deny God's existence, to deny the existence of a greater, of a transcendent power. And now Rashi does it. Harei sheva averot. We're looking at 7 transgressions. Harishona goreret hashniya. The first causes the second, it brings along the second. In other words, it's a consequence of the first. V'chein ad hashvi'it ve'eluhein, and going all the way up to the 7th transgression. Lo lamad, he didn't study. V'lo asa, he didn't perform. Mo'es ba'acherim ha'osim, he looks down on, he scorns other people who perform this. It's number 3, right? Soneh et hachachamim, he hates the sages. And it all starts, by the way, this is why, I'll finish it up. Monea et acherim, and then he prevents other people from performing them. Kofer b'mitzvot, he denies the validity of the commandments. Kofer ba'ikar, and ultimately he denies the very existence of God. So this is, when it says Talmud Torah keneged kulam, that the study of Torah is equivalent to them all. You can see it. This is an underscore of what we mean by that. And I think this may be a good point for me to stop. I've given you enough to swallow for the time being. And so we've got one more day. Let's see where we are. Okay, no, we're actually, I think that we're on the previous page, but I'm going to stop here. All right. Well, this is very hard. I warned you, I was not kidding. And you can see that I wasn't kidding, because it really, scrapes to the bone. And to be able to look at this and not, of course, say, forget about it, right? It's so easy to be angry. But I think I think we're talking about, people who deliberately do this kind of stuff. And again, is it important for us to understand the consequences of our decisions? Um, I've had to sermonize about these tough sections of the Torah, and it happens essentially several times a year. So the two times, of course, are here in Leviticus with Bechukotai, and also in Deuteronomy and Parsha Ki Tavor, where we have this kind of material. And I tried the last time, I believe, when I spoke about it, I tried to explain that there's actually some implied compliment, right? Somebody who's so hopeless, you don't bother. And in a sense, this is saying, I believe you're capable of something better. And that's why I'm telling you this. And I really believe in you. And the other piece is from just practicalities. And that is, I remember, so for example, when you are going into a discipline, such as acting, let's say, or art, or any of these kinds of things, your teachers are not always going to tell you, you're great, you're great, you're great, you're great. I mean, I do believe that one of the most important jobs a teacher has is to be encouraging. If you're not encouraging, you should not be a teacher. But on the other hand, if you're not willing to give criticism, if you're not willing to take criticism, don't ever bother trying to improve. And the ability to take criticism, if it's honest and it's not it's not directed at you personally, it's not ad hominem. But sometimes in those disciplines, people say things that are very insulting and stuff like that. And in a way, I think it's supposed to be getting someone's attention. But I know that when you go into those particular things, you're not always told how wonderful you are. And sometimes you're told very, very serious kinds of things. So we have a little more time. Please, I would love your reactions, because if there's any way I can help you, absorb this without kicking back, not to say that you are, I'd like to be able to do that. No comments. Ouch.
Well, I would still say that at least one of my siblings, if not more than one,
Yes.
has done all of that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that it's been with, great intention of doing all of that, but that's just kind of who they are.
Right.
And I don't consider them evil,
Correct.
but they have, led to me, for instance, committing less of the commandments when I get together with them for Passover.
Right.
Things like that, it's just, but they're not evil.
I agree.
I mean, in my opinion, they're not. Maybe in the opinion of this writer, they are. I don't know.
I am with
When
you.
in Rome, right? I mean, that's what you have going on, Lauren. It's a when in Rome sort of thing. Yeah.
I mean, I don't, I compromise. I don't break every, I don't eat hummus or anything, but
Right.
it's not the kind of Passover that I would have if I were not with them.
Right.
And this is just an example. It's not the only
Lauren, I share more of that than you might imagine. Okay. Seriously, I've had to learn how to come off the mountaintop. Okay. And it's okay. I mean, I've been doing this for a long, long time now. But that's why one needs the oral Torah and the study of this. But you have to start off with a simple, proposition. And then you have to work it through. But if you don't know the basic skeleton, right, you've got nothing to hang on. And this is a basic skeleton that we're looking at, so that we have some shape that we can try and, understand this. But I agree. I mean, my sister is agnostic. That's what she says. Okay. I don't try to prove God's existence to her. First of all, I don't know that you can prove God's existence. I think it comes deep inside of you in a way that you choose to look at reality. And we live in a culture that is not actually helping us to do that, to accomplish this.
And your view of God and my view of God are not the same, because we are two different people. And so it's really hard to explain to somebody what you believe in as opposed to what they should believe in. you know, it's like,
Well, I don't think agnosticism is the point. I mean, if you're just not sure whether God exists, that's not the point. I think the attitude, in other words, I share some skepticism about all of this, but I don't have the attitude of scorning it and thinking it's, you
Right.
know, not, it's all invalid and that it, you know, should be thrown away. That's different from my family. We may share some of the skepticism, but we have different attitudes about religion and rabbis and sages and mitzvot and all of that.
Yeah, I mean, again, I don't consider in fact, I see so many incredible things that my sister does, in fact, do, you know, in terms of her acts of compassion and concern, you know, which go far beyond my abilities. I really think I think before we end the session, I think what is valuable here is not to utilize this as a goad to judge other people. I think we need to look at it at ourselves. Okay, am I studying sufficiently? Am I? I mean, my level of knowledge, I'm grateful for what I have. And to look at myself and by the way, Golda, in terms of what you were saying about, you know, different beliefs in God, my belief is ever evolving. Right?
Mhm.
I understand
Sure.
Elohim now in a different kind of way than I understood it 5 years ago.
Sure.
Right? So, I mean, these are all things which we grow, but I think what is so important is not to look at these passages and say, oh, so-and-so, so-and-so. No, absolutely not. Okay? This
Because
is,
that's because you're doing one of those things when you do that.
well, that's the question, right?
Yeah.
So Mordechai Miller, in reading this material, has to say, wait a second, how does this affect Mordechai Miller? To
Right.
what degree is Mordechai Miller rejecting God or rejecting commandments or being lazy in Torah study? Or, you know, it says, Amelim Torah.
Mhm. It's
So
a
that's
personal
so important.
journey.
So important. Yes.
I mean, though on Tuesday we were talking about not Tuesday, Monday, a group thing that you could have a group getting blessings,
Yes. Yes.
but the curses are more, or the non-blessings are more personal,
Right.
maybe.
Right. And again, I'm not saying it might not expand a little bit in the sense that you're mentioning, Golda,
Yeah.
I'm glad I got that in before I stop the recording, which I'm going to do right now. So thank you until tomorrow.